Welcome to AntArctic Stories, a podcast that takes you behind the scenes into the rich world of people who live, work, and undertake daring expeditions in the polar regions. My name is Heather Thorkelson, and I'll be your host today. Today on the podcast, I'm going to walk you through 5 reasons to avoid crowdsourcing your trip to Antarctica and what to do instead. For most people, going to Antarctica is a once-in-a-lifetime bucket list trip, so it's not a decision to be made lightly. But there's so much information on the internet, so how do you sift through it all? Eager travelers often turn to Facebook groups, Reddit, the Lonely Planet forums, and other online chat spaces to ask the general public who have been to Antarctica what they recommend. Here are 5 reasons we suggest you avoid this tactic, and we'll follow it up with some easy steps that you can take instead. Number 1. Not everyone has the same budget as you. Countless times I've seen people ask for recommendations in Facebook groups and get everything from ships that cost $7,000 per person at their lowest price point to ships that cost $20,000 per person at their lowest price point. And of course, you have no way of knowing this, nor do the people making the recommendation know what you're willing or able to spend. As such, no 2 recommendations are equal, and then you often have to wade through all of this information on your own. Number 2. Not everyone has the same objectives as you regarding what they want to see and do while in Antarctica. Some people specifically choose their trip because they wanted to be there when the baby penguins are hatching. Others booked based on when they could do the most whale watching or take the best sunset photos, and yet others booked based on how many adventure activities they could pack in. Without knowing what you want to experience, other people's recommendations become a lot less relevant. Number 3. Not everyone has the same expectations in terms of comfort level and size of ship as you do. Some people are willing to pay extra for luxury, while others desperately want the expeditionary feel of a converted Russian research vessel. And some people don't care so much about how much time you get on shore, therefore being on a larger ship is no big deal, while others want as much time on shore as possible, in which case the smaller the ship, the better. Furthermore, we often have people ask us which ships or companies tend to have a younger, more adventurous type of traveler on board. If you're that type of person, and you book with a company that has a mostly 65-plus retired clientele who are more concerned with the luxury of the vessel, it's going to be a mismatch. Number 4. Just because someone went with X company on X ship and had an amazing time, it doesn't mean that you'll have the same experience. Antarctica is always amazing, but a good analogy would be like asking random people on the internet for advice on which resort to stay at in Cancun or the Canary Islands. There's a huge amount of difference from one resort to the next in terms of comfort level, amenities, and even customer care, not to mention what time of year they went on vacation there. It's no different when choosing which company and ship to sail with to Antarctica. Number 5. Travelers who have been to Antarctica are primarily familiar with their own personal experience. The month they went, the things they saw, the type of people they traveled with, but they can't tell you what earlier or later in the season is like. They can't tell you why one ship will be much better for your travel objectives over another. They can't tell you what the qualitative difference is between traveling on a 100-passenger vessel versus a 200-passenger vessel is, and it's a huge difference. This is not to say anything negative about people's personal opinions or experiences. It's absolutely fantastic that they had a wonderful experience and are happy to recommend the company that they went with. The challenge is that what they experienced might not line up with your own wants and needs, and no one wants to drop multiple thousands of dollars on a trip that didn't turn out the way they expected. Case in point, before I became involved in the polar regions as a guide and eventually a company owner, my aunt and uncle went to Antarctica on a ship with over 500 passengers. I had 0 frame of reference. At the time, I don't think I realized that you could step on shore and visit penguin colonies, etc. But because they raved about their ship and the experience, I didn't think twice about it, and I could have easily fallen into the trap of booking with the same company based on their recommendation. Little did I know, but ships carrying 500 guests can't disembark in Antarctica. So my aunt and uncle's experience of the place was just sailing through and looking out the window. I would have hated that, to be so close and not be able to experience the land and the wildlife the way that it's possible to experience it. It wouldn't have been the right trip for me. But don't fret. While crowdsourcing can be a simple starting point, we've got some recommendations of what you can do instead. Number 1, rather than crowdsource, first get clear on your budget. As of the recording of this episode in April 2021, prices range from $5,700 per person for a triple share with porthole windows to $75,000 per person on the luxury ships for the best suite. That's a pretty big range. Now, think about how important it is for you, for example, to be able to sit in your cabin and look out the window. Or not. And keep in mind that if you want to participate in extra activities like camping or kayaking, they nearly always cost extra, from a couple $100s and on up from there, depending on the activity, which will add to your budget. And also, remember that international flights are not included. The rates that are quoted for Antarctic trips are just for the trip itself. And here's a little insider tip on this same theme of budget. You will see a lot of deals for Antarctica posted online and in different groups. Before you jump on a deal, listen to our next few suggestions and make sure that what is being offered for a discount lines up with what you actually want. And one more tip on this. Working with a polar agent like Twin Tracks will help you access all of the different deals that are out there at any given time and will cost you exactly $0 extra. But more on that later. Let's move on to number 2. Number 2, rather than crowdsource, get clear on your objectives. Are you into photography and really want to get images of the pristine landscape? Are you really active and want to do all of the activities offered on ships such as kayaking, camping, and snowshoeing? Do you just want to get to Antarctica on a standard sort of 10-day classic trip? Or are you looking to spend extra time and money and go and visit the sub-Antarctic island of South Georgia to see the famous 3-foot-tall king penguins and massive gassy elephant seals? The things that matter to you, what you want to get out of the experience, are really important. These will dictate what time of the season is best for you to go, which company and ship will be the best to travel with, and which itinerary will suit you best. You have a lot of options, but narrowing it down based on what's important to you is key. Number 3, rather than crowdsource, get clear on the type of ship experience you want for this trip. Not all ships are created equal. You've got big versus small, new versus old, luxury versus comfortable versus old school expedition style. And then there's traveler type on board, as different ships and companies attract different clientele. Not to mention, a twin suite on one ship might be 80 square feet, while on another ship, that same twin suite is actually 200 square feet. Or one ship might offer camping and kayaking, while another might offer camping, kayaking, snowshoeing, and mountaineering. There really are a lot of things to take into consideration, and it's worth it to take the time to think through all of your priorities for this epic adventure. Number 4. Finally, rather than crowdsource, choose a trusted and experienced polar agency to help you. Sure, you can go directly to an expedition company, but they will focus on selling you their product on their ships. A polar agent will look at all the ships across all the companies and help you find the best trip for your budget, time frame, and interests. And make sure it's a polar agent, not just a regular travel agency. You want to be speaking with someone who specializes in the polar regions, and you may even want to ask them how many trips they've taken themselves and with how many different companies. There are a handful of us out there, and it's worth getting in contact. Finally, it's important to note that none of the polar agencies will cost you anything extra to work with. Polar agents are paid by commission, and there's no extra charge to you. Worried that an agency will push you towards a particular ship or company because of the kickbacks that they get? Let's dispel that myth right away. At Twin Tracks, we get almost the exact same amount of commission no matter who we book you with. And sometimes we'll book clients on a trip where the commission is actually significantly lower, simply because we know it's the best trip for you. For our team, matching the right traveler with the right experience based on their expectations is hands down the most important, because our objective is for you to have such an incredible experience from the minute you get in touch with us to the minute you get home from Antarctica that you're happy to recommend us to your friends. If we do our job well, our little family-owned company grows, and who wouldn't want that? So, to wrap up, we've given you 5 reasons to avoid crowdsourcing your trip to Antarctica, and 4 steps you can take instead that will put you in a much better position to pull the trigger and finally book that trip of a lifetime to the Great White Continent. Thanks so much for listening, and if you have any questions, send us a message via our Facebook page, website, or Instagram, and we'll be happy to help you out. We hope you enjoyed today's episode of Antarctic Stories. Make sure you hit the subscribe button so you don't miss any future episodes. And if you have an extra minute, leaving a rating or review for the podcast will really help us in reaching a wider audience. Antarctic Stories is a production of Twin Tracks Expeditions, a family-run agency of polar guides who have spent the last decade working on polar expedition ships. We bring you unparalleled insider expertise in small ship voyages to the Arctic and Antarctica, and we love sharing our insider knowledge to help you find the perfect ship for your next polar expedition. Find us on Facebook, Instagram, or at twintracksexpeditions.com.